Hello, my name is Julia, and welcome to That Ain't Right, where I will discuss serial killers and other criminals that I find on the internet. Today, we will be discussing Andrea Yates, who in 2001 killed all 5 of her children by drowning them in a bathtub. Now, a quick disclaimer, there will be talk on suicide, self-harm, and mental illness. Andrea Yates was born in Houston, Texas on July 2nd, 1964. After graduating college by 1985, she became a registered nurse. My previous podcast episode was on Amelia Dyer, and I'm not even sure if anybody is able to access that anymore because I had issues with the website, so that may or may not be available to listen to. But if it's not, look her up, very interesting. Maybe I'll do her again, we'll see. Anyway, I'm just now realizing how similar Amelia Dyer and Andrea Yates were. Both nurses, both killed kids, both faced mental illness, which we will get into later. And I say they both suffered from mental illness, but I guess so do most serial killers do in one way or another. During her career as a nurse, she met Russell, or Rusty, Yates, and they married on April 17th, 1993. In February of 1994, Yates gave birth to their first son, Noah. However, by the 4th child, Andrea became depressed with what was believed to be postpartum depression. After her depression began, Andrea became suicidal, and on June 16, 1999, Rusty found her shaking profusely and admitted her to the hospital for an overdose on pills as a suicide attempt. After Andrea was released from the hospital, she begged Rusty to let her die and held a knife to her neck. She was then prescribed a cocktail of drugs and appeared to be stable. Now this may sound bad because she killed her 5 kids, which stick around because we will get into in depth. However, I almost feel bad for her because we will continue to go through all of her suicide attempts and her hospital visits, and after all of that, I feel like she wasn't given the right amount of help that she could have had, which could have saved her children had we had known what she was going to do in the future. Now, in July 1999, she became visibly suicidal again with another 2 suicide attempts. Actually, during her trial, her first psychiatrist, Dr. Eileen Starbranch, testified against Andrea because she told her and Rusty that having more children could push her into an even more psychotic depression. And little hint, it did, unfortunately, which is very, very, very unfortunate, actually. Now, even after being told this, she went on to have her final and 5th child. Imagine having 5 kids. I mean, I grew up an only child, so I couldn't imagine having more than one. I mean, really, I couldn't imagine having any. But having 5 kids, I mean, how do you afford their school? You don't have to buy your kids a car, but clothes for school, college textbooks. I mean, come on, 5 kids? Anyway, she became more stable until her father died in March of 2001. She then stopped taking her prescribed medication and, quote, mutilated herself, unquote, causing hospitalization. I couldn't find out exactly what that meant since a lot of her actions are pretty extreme anyway, so I was just curious. But we also want to keep this somewhat not age-restricted, so it's probably for the best. In April of 2001, she was released, but on May 3rd, 2001, she chose to draw a bath midday and planned to drown the children, but decided against it. She later confessed to the police about her actions and her thoughts, and she was then hospitalized again on the suspicion that she was planning on killing herself. Which confuses me, because the suspicion that she was planning on killing herself, yet she confessed that she was planning on killing her kids, so why wasn't she arrested for conspiracy to murder her children instead of hospitalized for wanting to kill herself when she clearly states that she wanted to kill her kids? That, I feel like it's a disservice to her and her children, her poor kid, what? Now, maybe I just couldn't find anything in my research, and that's on me, and I am missing something, an interview or something, and that's my fault. But to me, I don't get it. Finally, on June 20th, 2001, Andrea was left home alone with her 5 kids while Rusty went to work. Now, it was only an hour until Rusty's mother was supposed to be home with Andrea. So within that hour, she drowned each of her 5 children individually. Her poor children must have been so scared. When her eldest son walked in on his younger sister floating in the bathtub, he asked what was wrong. Why was she alone in the bath? Why was she floating? And unfortunately, he did come to the realization and tried to run, but Andrea caught him and drowned him as well. Andrea left him, along with his sister, in the bathtub with his siblings dead in their beds. She then called the police, then Rusty, repeating, "It's time, it's time." Okay, so that's the case of Andrea Yates. She is still in Kerrville State Hospital due to her mental illness. And now, I'm very into true crime, but researching this case has been very graphic and difficult to complete, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like this is one of the most difficult cases I've come across, and me deciding to sit here and talk about it and research it for hours, I'm like, why did I do this to myself? It's so heavy and dark, and I don't know how to feel. Now, before we wrap this up, I think it's incredibly important to understand and discuss mental illness, especially with this case. I think it's safe to say that Andrea and her husband did try to use tools given to them, and I will give them that credit. However, I do think that there were times that they refused to listen to their doctors, such as when her psychiatrist suggested she should not have any more kids because of her postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. I feel like them refusing to listen and continue to have another child, she spiraled and she ended her 5 children's lives. I mean, although I do feel bad for her and her husband, I do feel as though there were times that maybe they weren't fair to themselves and they didn't take advantage of the opportunities given to protect their children. Although I do want to hate Andrea Yates, I will say she is obviously not there mentally, and that's why she wasn't put in prison. She was put in a mental institution, which I think is fair. And I would love to hear other people's opinions on this, and I'm gonna upload this everywhere I can, so please tell me what you guys think, because I'm honestly very curious. I can go both ways. I'm angry about the situation, but at the same time I'm like, well, she was hospitalized, she was given medication, she saw a psychiatrist. What else could she have done immediately? Could they see this coming? I don't think we know. But I know I just said this, but we also could go back and say that we did know, because her psychiatrist suggested if she had another child, she would face more psychosis, which she ended up doing. So, is she at fault? Is Rusty at any fault? Is her psychiatrist at fault for not seeing this any sooner and trying to get her hospitalized sooner? Who is in the wrong? What should have happened before? Well, that is all I have for today. That is the case of Andrea Yates. I am sweating. I don't know how to feel. That was very intense for me, and I had to do this over the course of several days because it was too intense for me. So anyway, please let me know what you think about the case and what you think of the situation, and I would love recommendations because I do post this everywhere. I would love new recommendations about what people are interested in. Alright, thanks for listening.